another debate coming up. We're going to go into this story here about Briahna Joy Gray and Robbie. I want you guys to see this. Now, this gets pretty testy, but Briahna Joy Gray and Robbie Soave actually had similar discussion on Rising about, what can be done here. Not necessarily like who started it, so to speak, but they started off this conversation discussing how the beheaded babies thing was debunked, and so many news outlets ran with that story. Now, this conversation took a turn that I was not expecting. And this is the first time I think I saw Robbie actually yell like that. So prepare yourself, but it's coming. Let's go ahead and get into this discussion here with Bree and Robbie. Oh, hold on to your seats.
Every interest in validating a horrific attack from Hamas against Israeli citizens as they are looking for international support, etc. The fact that they were unwilling to confirm the reports, I think, was a pretty significant red flag. And then the fact that there were, as the lie was spreading all across social media, being picked up, CNN said they confirmed it. CNN said they confirmed it midday yesterday, and that it made it all the way to the White House and out of Joe Biden's lips. And then that lie transformed it from just there were 40 beheaded babies to I saw personally evidence of 40 beheaded babies. People jumped online saying, I told you so. You guys were trying to deny the cruelty of Hamas. I told you so. Because the president said it, a president who is so known for being a serial fabulist that his moniker is literally Lion Biden.
Yeah, Biden clearly got this one wrong. This rumor that has floated on social media and that several mainstream news organizations have grappled with is not in fact confirmed. They said it's one of those we talked to someone who saw it kind of thing. Biden has a long history of exaggerations, outright lies. In fact, he had to exit his first presidential campaign after plagiarizing a British politician's speech. He's made misstatements about the circumstances of Beau Biden's death. Him and other political figures, including Hillary Clinton and media figures, often have said things about how they were, close to the danger when they visited combat zones. Remember the whole helicopter or plane or whatever it was coming under fire that Hillary Clinton talked about. So just because conservatives know this, just because Biden says it does not make it true, and his own White House is not backing it up. I
would argue if Biden's saying it is probably not true.
With this story, it's not like it doesn't need to be true in order for the attacks to be horrific. The violence is horrific. There are bodies lining the streets. There are bullet-ridden corpses. Women died. Children died. It was an unprovoked attack on innocent, defenseless civilians, many of whom have been taken captive, and their lives are now being threatened. So it doesn't. This does not need to be true in order for this attack to rise to the level of.
What is the advantage? Because I have a theory of making up something like this.
So here's what I think the advantage is, and some of you may remember this. If I remember correctly, wasn't there a similar story about beheaded children, something similar to that, right before the Iraq war, if I remember correctly? And when you use children, obviously that's going to invoke some type of emotion to people, right? Now, it should, I would say. So then obviously that's one thing that first is probably going to touch mothers, because women tend to be, nurturing, that kind of thing. So then you have the mothers. And then you have the fathers that also feel that same type of a similar effect from the mother. And it kind of riles up people, not just internally, but it riles up people to a sense that, oh, heck no, we have to go save those children. Now, this goes back to this the same rhetoric that we hear, or at least I've heard with multiple wars in my lifetime, we have to save the women and the children. And what I've said before, obviously with war, there's civilian casualties. And if it was really about saving the women and the children, you wouldn't have war in the first place. You would call for peace, right? But of course, they're not going to say that because there's no profit in peace. There's profit in war. Now, I believe the reason why they ran with this narrative, and they didn't have confirmation and no one apparently had seen it, is because, again, it was a similar narrative to that, if I remember correctly, before the Iraq war, which prompted the US government to say, well, we have to go in and act because we have to save the children. And I believe that this is being used again this time around, and it was spread all over different media outlets. And second of all, I really believe that the US government is going to try to find this particular situation to use this as an excuse to go to war with Iran. Because they can say that Iran funded Hamas, and they'll use the excuse of the babies plus that together to say, well, we have to go after Iran now. And then you'll see another war. But let's continue.
What is your theory?
Well,
I mean, I don't know who, I think, I don't know who initiated the rumor. We heard something about injured children being moved from one location to another. I think that might be the genesis of it. If that is true, I don't know, but go ahead.
And to be clear, this lie has been parroted everywhere. I referenced in a different segment that there was a debate between Cornel West and Alan Dershowitz on Fox last night. One of the things that Dershowitz used to try to win the argument against Cornel West, who was arguing for the shared horror, the indiscriminate horror of dead children, whether they be Palestinian lives or precious Israeli lives. Dershowitz says, well, what about the 40 beheaded babies? And that, I think, is a clue to what that particular kind of a rumor does. If you have a tragic mass of death on both sides, including multitudes more Palestinians who have been killed over the last 10, 15 years than Israelis who have been killed. And children, Palestinian children, a much bigger, horrible, tragic, disgusting pile of Palestinian bodies, then you have to find a way to distinguish why those kind of raw numbers and why all of the children and the tragedy shouldn't be treated equally. And we see words like barbaric, barbarism.
I mean, because it was barbaric.
Flung around. But the barbarism, the inhumanity of bombing children in Palestine is not described in those same words. What you need to do is find language that makes it feel like there's something different to the character of it when an Israeli child is killed versus when a Palestinian child is killed.
You have to find the type of vocabulary that will evoke enough emotion in people that will get the people riled up enough to the point where the U.S. can say, okay, we got to go in because we got to save the women and the children. A vocabulary is very important, particularly in times of war.
When a Palestinian child is killed, and we heard this from Dershowitz and many other defenders of the indiscriminate killing of Palestinian children, well, it must be the case that Hamas was using them as a human shield. It must be the case that a Hamas missile was located close to those children and it could not be helped. And on the other side, we're being told that Palestinians are keeping Israeli children in cages and decapitating them by the dozens. Neither which rumor turned out to be true. And yet in the middle of a tragedy,
and the children in the cages, the pictures that were shown of the children in the cages, those were actually Palestinian children.
That needed no embellishment to make the case for why Hamas's acts are horrible and tragic. There is still this embellishment, and I believe it is rooted in a desire to strip humanity from the people of Palestine and justify doing what Max Miller and a number of other officials in the Israeli government have said,
Max
which
Miller
is to flatten.
is an obscure Republican official.
Oh, here he goes. Here he goes. Buckle your seatbelt, ladies and gentlemen. And really quick, if you have not had a chance to do so, go ahead and smash that like button. That helps me out with the algorithm. Here he goes. Robbie's about to take off. I think Bree went on too long for Robbie, so he's about to
By doing what Max Miller and a number of other officials in the Israeli government have said,
Max Miller is an obscure Republican official. It does not matter what he says.
So every leftist, wait a minute, Robbie, every leftist in America was asked to apologize for some random protest.
They should apologize. They should apologize for their endorsement of terrorist attacks on innocent Israeli civilians, just as I am outraged by the retaliatory actions that are killing innocent Palestinian children everywhere. I care about both of these things and have said I care about both of these things over and over again. It is you and the idiotic, leftist, terrorist sympathizing people who do not care about the dead Israelis. They don't.
Look, let me tell you something. I can tell when he was about to snap because he did like the, hold on. Can I just say something really quick? You guys know that one person, like there's always like that one person that for the most part just is not a yeller. That's not really a part of their character, right? Like they may, be firm, but they're not like a yeller. And then there's like that one time where they do kind of yell and go off and everybody just goes, everyone's creeped out and is like, what the fuck just happened? And it's not because, that people aren't allowed to yell, but it's when those people yell, when you hear them go off, it's like, oh my God, what's happening? What's going on? Or it could be like the quiet kid that was in school. And then one day he just snaps and just yells at everybody. And was like, oh my God, what the fuck? Like it's that kind of thing, right? So let me tell you, I'm going to show you when he was about to go off. Hold on. Because he did the eye roll. And see, for some people, the eye roll is not much. But let me show you how this is a different type of eye roll.
Hamas was using them as a human shield. It must be the case that a Hamas missile was located close to those children and it could not be helped. And on the other side, we're being told that Palestinians are keeping Israeli children in cages and decapitating them by the dozens. Neither which rumor turned out to be true. And yet in the middle of a tragedy that needed no embellishment to make the case for why Hamas.
So the first thing I notice is he's been fidgeting with this pen. So this is the anger and frustration starting to build up inside. He's fiddling with the pen, just FYI. So it's coming. Just wait for it.
Hamas's acts are horrible and tragic. There is still this embellishment, and I believe it is rooted in a desire to strip humanity from the people of Palestine and justify doing what Max Miller and a number of other officials in the Israeli government have said,
Max Miller is an obscure Republican official. It does not matter what he says.
So every leftist...
Right there. So he did the eye roll. Okay. And typically when the eye roll comes in, if the conversation would have ended, that probably would have been the end of it, right? But Robbie's like one of the more preppier like dudes. Like, I don't know. I went to college with dudes like this. He's like one of the preppier, like white dudes that's probably for the most part is pretty chill. And then when he does go off, it's kind of like, whoa, what the fuck? Dude's crazy. What's happening? Right. But he did the eye roll. So the chill kind of, people, preppy kind of people or whatever, when they do the eye roll, there's something else coming. I'm telling you from experience. Watch out for the chill dude eye roll.
Wait a minute, Robbie. Every leftist in America was asked to apologize for some random protest.
They should apologize. They should apologize for their endorsement of terrorist attacks on.
There it is. There it is.
Innocent Israeli civilians, just as I am outraged by the retaliatory actions that are killing innocent Palestinian children everywhere. I care about both of these things and have said I care about both of these things over and over again. It is you and the idiotic
So I don't know if he was going to call us fat leftists or fascist leftists. That's the part I wasn't sure about. There was that. Are we the fat leftists? Are we the fascist leftists? I didn't know where he was going with that. But you see, he's like, his face it looks like he's starting to turn a little red. It's all coming out now. And I have a feeling Robbie's probably been holding this in for quite some time. It's the people. My mom always told me, let it out. It's the people who hold it in and then they finally explode. And people are like, what the fuck is wrong with dude? What just happened? So, it's just all a lot of look at the face and everything. This is when people get scared.
Leftist, terrorist sympathizing people who do not care about the dead Israelis. They don't.
So I'm a terrorist.
And they've said it over and over again. Black Lives Matter has said it. The Harvard students have said it. The DSA in various locations have said it. The left endorses what Hamas did. They do. They endorse.
Ooh, man. I don't know. Maybe Robbie just had a bad morning, but this was a pretty By the way, if Bree would have reacted this way, I think we know there would have been a difference in reference to how people saw this.
It.
The Harvard newspaper said exactly what the editorial page of Israel's major newspaper said.
I don't give a
So if you notice, Bree is still remaining very calm. So Robbie is, when people start lashing out on you like this, the best thing that you can do is remain calm, because he all in his emotions right now. And sometimes when you get really emotional like that and you're having it during a debate, it can kind of make people not really pay attention to what you're saying because they're just looking at it's all driven by emotion, right? So it just, she's saying that the Harvard newspaper, the students of Harvard newspaper, that basically the New York Times said the same thing. And so he doesn't really care about that, but this is, this is the Robbie angst coming out.
Locations have said it. The left endorses what Hamas did. They do. They endorse it.
The Harvard newspaper said exactly what the editorial page of Israel's major newspaper said.
I don't give a Briahna.
Okay, well, that's clear that that's your opinion. But the Israeli voices in Israel who are getting killed because their fascist right-wing government decides to keep 2.3
The Israelis are getting killed
people.
because a terrorist group targeted them. And they bear responsibility for what they did.
Well, Robbie, if you think you know more than Israelis in Israel, then you can feel free to have your position. But the position of Israelis who are the ones that are being victimized by this terrorism is that the fact of stripping the rights of 2.3 million people in an apartheid state on their border are conditions
justify
terrorist attacks on civilians in those towns.
Do you think that justifies?
Notice how he cuts off when people start to see. This is just a common trend that I noticed when people start to talk about the struggle that the Palestinians have been dealing with for years. The other person wants to interrupt them and bring it back to the state of Israel.
As terrorist attacks?
No.
Well, I don't either. So why do you keep saying?
Well, I don't think the occupation is justified either. Okay. So why are you saying that I do?
Robbie,
But Robbie, why aren't you that passionate about that occupation? Why aren't you that passionate about the Palestinian kids that have been beaten in the street and is on video all over social media? Why aren't you that passionate about when IDF came into the Al-Aqsa Mosque and beat Palestinians there when they were in their place of worship? Why weren't you that passionate then? Why weren't you that passionate when the IDF had been killing Palestinians all these years? Where's that same type of fire and passion? Why is that type of fire and passion only when it's happening to the Israeli people? You see, I think a lot of times we have blind spots. Sometimes it's blind spots. Sometimes it's bias. Sometimes it's subconscious bias. You don't see that same type of passion come out when it's the other way around. And this ain't the first time. Think about the many police brutality discussions that have happened on Rising. Robbie was not sympathetic, especially when Olay was still on the show and there were different police brutality cases that were brought up and the victim that was brutalized was Black. Robbie was not sympathetic. I remember Robbie and Bree having this conversation on Rising about a man who left his apartment and shot a 13-year-old kid who was trying to steal a car. Now, that man wasn't a police officer. Robbie had no sympathy. Turns out that wasn't even the guy who shot him. It wasn't even his car. It wasn't even his property. But there was no sympathy there. So what I see is a trend, boo. Let's continue.
Not saying that you do, but I have yet to hear you offer a solution for why the people that have been kept in an open air prison for 17 years and who are being indiscriminately bombed right now, and their water shut off, and their heat shut off, and their food shut off, and the access to medical supplies shut off, and UN staff members being killed by Israeli rockets. What is the solution for that group of people, 2.3 million people, to get self-determination?
Is the solution for a terrorist group to attack?
Answer the question.
See, let's direct it right back to Hamas.
What is their solution?
I support a two-state
Because there was a peaceful
solution,
protest.
and
there have been decades of peaceful protests. In 2018, there was this march. I always get the name wrong. Sorry, March of Return, where thousands of Palestinians marched along the wall, peacefully protesting, and Israeli IDF soldiers sniped down and shot them in the feet and knees, including children.
So that
they tried. Wait a minute. They tried BDS, and we were told, our own government said that if you support the boycott, divest, and sanction movement, you are not allowed to get a federal contract in several states, usually southern conservative states in the United States of America. So you're not allowed to do
DSA asks candidates whether they will make a pledge to never visit Israel. There's mutual boycotting going on.
What are you talking about?
Why don't you have that same sympathy about the story that Bree just told you about the Palestinian kids that were shot at their feet? You see, you guys, you see what I'm saying?
About. That's fine if they want to say that. The point is,
of course.
The point is, you're allowed to boycott. The question is whether or not your political opinion should get you out of a job. I thought you were a libertarian. I thought you cared about that.
I'm going to read a statement from DSA San Francisco. Violent oppression inevitably produces resistance. Socialists support the Palestinian people's and all people's right to resist and fight for their own liberation. This weekend's events are no different.
I'm sorry, is that supposed to be own? They literally just recited international law, which allows occupied people to resist.
This is why I say you endorse the left is endorsing the terrorist activities.
Okay, you can say that all you want, but
Robbie would probably still think, he would probably say to the slaves, well, I'm sorry. You can't rise up. You can't resist. You got to stay in your place of despair that you're in. I'm sorry, but it's so, don't you understand? There's a difference between this is colonization.
If you think that resistance means a terrorist group is allowed to indiscriminately kill civilians, that is a monstrous point of view. That is the view of the DSA. And that's the view of Black Lives Matter.
It's not.
The view of DSA has always been one of their principles in reference to Israel and Palestine. They have always been consistent about that, and they've always been public about that. This is not something that's new. You guys, or not you guys, but Robbie just noticing it now, but DSA has always had that principle as a part of their organization.
Not the view of Black Lives Matter.
It was the view of Black Lives Matter Chicago.
It's the view of someone who ran the Black Lives Matter Twitter page in Chicago. Right. And given that we just interviewed a libertarian, the head of the Libertarian Party, who just said that the Libertarian Party's rejection of RFK Jr. as a candidate was just a peccadillo by somebody that was running the Twitter account, and that she is very happy to embrace RFK Jr. as a candidate.
That's equivocating. I am calling out organizations and the public statements they're putting out.
No, the point is that when it came to the Black Lives Matter post, Robbie said it came from the entire organization. But when it came from the post from the Libertarian Party, Robbie was able to point out, oh no, it's just that one individual person who posted and handled that page. So how do you not know it's not one individual who is handling the Black Lives Matter Chicago page? You don't know. You didn't research it. You didn't check to see if that was the case. And in fact, most people haven't. Most people who are using that excuse about the Black Lives Matter post didn't check to see who runs that page, who's putting the information out there. And then they're saying all Black Lives Matter. So they're saying it's on the national level, the entire Black Lives Matter organization, which is not. That was Black Lives Matter Chicago.
which endorse terrorist activity, endorse violence,
Frankly,
endorse murder of innocents.
The condemnable action is
if I was the left, I would want to separate myself from these organizations a little bit more.
If you are not
just because someone's on the left doesn't mean they're a part of those organizations. You see, this is honestly what I think how a lot of people who are not on the left, I think this is what they think sometimes. They think that everybody's on the left. If you're on the left, you're a part of Black Lives Matter organization, you're a part of DSA or Socialist Alternative, I don't belong to any of those organizations. I'm on the left. I don't belong to any of those organizations, any of those groups. So that's a common misunderstanding. In fact, most of us are not a part of those groups. There's a reason why the membership, DSA membership, they lost 10,000 people this past year. But I think this is what a lot of people think. They think we're all part of like Black Lives Matter organization or this organization or that organization. I stand alone, boo.
I'm afraid of the words that are coming out of my mouth and would let me speak, Robbie, I would tell you. The condemnable action is the killing of civilians and innocents. The condemnable action is not resistance itself. That is something that is worth a distinction. And if you create conditions, every defender of Israel right now is saying, well, killing Palestinian kids is collateral damage. That's what it means for Israel to defend itself, that it's going to kill some Palestinian kids and innocents.
And I have criticized that every time it has appeared, has come across our screen.
The United States of America.
You didn't criticize it as passionately as you did a couple of minutes ago about the other side.
America did was to stand at a podium and say, without any caveats, Israel has a right to do that, to defend itself, even if it means killing those innocent women and children. And what people are responding to is the inconsistency with which the lives lost that are innocents are treated. And yes, it matters infinitely more that a sitting Congress member, and by the way, also Lindsey Graham, it wasn't just Max Miller, it was any number of Republican Congress members. Lindsey Graham also echoed the sentiment that we should level Gaza. He wants to go to nuclear war with Iran.
Yep.
That's the situation we're in. And so you're sitting here criticizing whoever runs the Black Lives Matter Chicago Twitter page. And I'm criticizing members of Congress who are openly who are openly contemplating genocide against a population of 2.3 million people, half of which are children.
But people don't care because they're brown and because most of them are Muslim.
I have criticized that over and over again. I will continue to do so. Lindsey Graham does not represent my views. I don't share any views with Lindsey Graham. His foreign policy is everything I think the Republican Party should pivot away from, and the Democratic Party, frankly, which is more bloodthirsty than the Republicans on this.
You keep saying that you criticize this stuff, Robbie, but
I do criticize. I don't hear a lot of criticism from you of the leftist groups endorsing terrorist attacks.
I don't think the leftist group should endorse terrorist attacks.
Well, they are endorsing
Wait a minute.
them.
Well, okay, and I don't agree with that. But what I fundamentally do agree with is that they endorse the right to resist. And you keep sitting here saying, I support.
What does that mean?
I support the occupation. The same way that if Israel has the right to defend itself, Palestinians also have the right to resist under international law. You are not allowed to keep people in an apartheid state in an occupied condition.
You're not allowed to shoot randomly into people's cars because you don't like the political situation.
You're not allowed to.
Dude, the IDF has been doing that shit for years. Like, that's the thing, Robbie. Robbie, where's that same sympathy towards apartheid, towards occupation? Like, these are huge issues. And Robbie's just acting like it's no big deal. So apparently, what do you think? These people are supposed to stay behind a cage their whole life?
Bomb humanitarian aid workers and Palestinian children.
I agree, you shouldn't do that.
Okay, so why is it that it only comes out they're not allowed? Israel has the right to resist, and it is violating international law. That's the subject of the conversation always. Palestinians have the right to resist.
And has violated international.
My question is defend, like when people say defend itself, defend against what? Defense against Hamas? And the reason why I ask is because Israel has all the resources. So it's like, I want to say this again. The fence is not a border. Gaza is not a separate country.
Talk to Bibi Netanyahu about it, because it's him and his right-wing
you're acting like I haven't criticized him all 3 days.
Why is it every time there's an effort to get to the root cause here? Who caused Hamas? Bibi Netanyahu. Who's killing these children? Who's keeping this occupied?
Who is endorsing what Hamas is doing? The American left. That's who.
There it goes again. That angst. No. I just want to put this out here for people who are not aware. There also have been Jewish people that are angry at Benjamin Netanyahu, by the way, that are angry at him, that have said that they feel that he's the one that has started this conflict. Whoo!
That's insane, Robbie.
Well, it's true. It is insane, but it's true.
That is so
I can
insane.
see their statements.
Okay.
Everyone knows it and everyone understands.
The American left disappears, and suddenly Israel is a multiracial, multi-religious halcyon fantasy land where Jews and Palestinians are walking arm in arm down the Gaza Strip.
The American left is humiliating itself on this issue. It's so apparent to everyone.
You want that to be true so hard. But what the reality is that finally the veil where everyone feels appalled to say the simple words, Palestine is an apartheid state. Israel is oppressing an occupied people. 2.3 million people, half of which are children, are being systematically starved and denied medical attention and denied clean water and
violent resistance against innocent people is the correct response.
Incredible freedom.
You see this? He's not really focused on the fact that people are occupied. He doesn't care about that. He's basically just saying, like, he's like, well, yeah, that's not right either. But he really basically feels like they should just stay where they are and just deal with it. Because otherwise, what are they supposed to do? They can't go anywhere.
To finally be able to say those things, and in response, because Israel understands the incredible power of shifting its greatest allies in the public opinion away from unquestioning support, it is going out of
nothing is sending people more supportive of Israel than what the left is doing right now. More supportive of military action, which is what Hamas wants.
People are going out of their way to lie. And spread from the podium of the United States of America. The president they're so threatened by people being able to just speak to the obvious horror that the Palestinians have been living under for years, that they're now willing to lie and fabricate stories about Israeli kids in cages and what seems to be, and we'll see if any more reporting vets this out, a lie about 40 beheaded. How low and craven and gross do you have to be to make up a lie?
How craven do you have to be?
Let me just pause here for just a second, because there's something I do want to add here that I think is important as well. If you pay attention to this conversation and the debate that we just saw with Cornel West and Alan Dershowitz, if you notice it's almost like you're not allowed to have any sympathy for the Palestinians that have been abused and killed. And I've seen that with like both discussions. That's why Robbie keeps bringing it back to what Hamas did to the Israeli people and not focusing on what's happening to the Palestinian people, which has been happening to them for years. That's almost what it seems like. That seems like the narrative that people are trying to push.
To say they had it coming, which is what these people are saying.
You can keep putting words in people's mouth, but nobody believes that, Robbie.
Well,
I think Robbie's spending too much time on social media. He might need to take a break from Twitter for a second, because it sounds like to me he's looking at what people are saying on Twitter, right? But I think he needs to stop giving the left this type of credit. We're not that big. We are not that big. And I think Robbie's building it up in his head to believe that we're bigger than we actually are. We're just not. Not everyone who's saying that on Twitter is a part of the left. Some of those people aren't even, aligned with the political party at all. Some of those people are just looking at history and looking at the issue for what it is and looking at the conflict for what it is. So I think he's got to stop giving us more credit. We're really not that big.
I read the exact
tell
statement.
Your own tale.
The right to resist and fight for their own liberation. This weekend's events are no different.
Yes.
That is an endorsement under the banner of liberation, under the attacks that Hamas took this weekend.
Your quibble was with international law and the fact that you seem to think that people should be living in prison conditions for the rest of their lives without ever doing
I don't think violence against civilians will help to ameliorate the appalling conditions of the Palestinians. Nor do most of the Palestinians, I would presume.
Neither do I. And that's if you refuse to acknowledge...
Hamas thinks that and the DSA thinks that.
If you refuse to acknowledge the difference between resistance and attacks on civilians, that's interesting.
I'm not the one who fails to make that distinction. The DSA, the left, is the one failing to make that distinction.
I just made that distinction. You might not have heard it over the bluster, but I made that distinction. And the fundamental issue is that, of course, Palestine has the right to resist, and people have to work through what that looks like. It's going to include violent resistance. International law allows violent resistance.
I don't think violent resistance will help liberate Palestine. It's a bad idea, and they shouldn't do it.
Robbie, so much of what you want to hear is always in the second half of my statement, but you cut it off before I can say it.
Your statements go on a long way sometimes.
Okay, well, I'm sorry that I'm trying to inject nuance in a situation where you want to just sit here and echo what the mainstream media has to say about how terrorism is wrong. We all agree terrorism is wrong, and killing civilians is wrong. I happen to want to...
I apologize for echoing the mainstream consensus that terrorism is bad. I'm sure our viewers will be appalled by that statement.
No, it's very brave and big of you to do that. The courageous thing to do right now is to call out...
You do, in fact, make it seem difficult.
Our state-funded abuses of the Palestinian people. And while you say, I agree with that, every time I bring it up, you never bring it up. I bring it up and you say, oh, yeah, I agree. But that doesn't sound like advocacy to me.
And we're going to go ahead and stop it there because I thought that was a good stopping point. It does go on. But the point that Bree's making, and that's something I've noticed it too, he doesn't bring it up. She's the one that brings it up, and then he'll say that he agrees. So if he really cared about that issue so much, how come he never brings it up? And now here's someone now, I had my issues with Hassan Piker. He's rather annoying. He attacked us after, when we were doing our General Strike Summit, he decided to go after that, for whatever reason. It's just so stupid. But Hassan Piker actually recently had something to say about the conflict. And he did get a bit emotional as well. Listen to this.
The Shireen Abu Akleh murder, again, in the hands of an Israeli sniper that the Israeli government said was actually Palestinians, and Western media immediately disproved that. And then what did the IDF do? What did the IDF do?
I don't know.
When a wonderful voice for good, a Christian woman, a Christian Palestinian, and an American citizen, Shireen Abu Akleh, was murdered as she was on her way to one of these refugee camps. She had a press vest on. She had a press helmet on. She was shot in the neck so that she could be assassinated. Okay? This was a major issue. They wanted to do... Sorry. This is really fucked up. They went to her funeral and beat the shit out of people.
Yep.
And ripped the Palestinian flag off of her. Palestinians can't have a moment of peace in this fucking world. They can't even mourn the dead.
Now, I wanted to show you that because I just wanted to remind you that they can't even die in peace. I remember that when they were carrying her casket for the funeral, they were beating up the Palestinian people that you couldn't even have a funeral. But Robbie don't want to talk about that. See, that's the thing. None of these people want to bring this up. Alan Dershowitz don't want to talk about this. And that was all on video. I'll take the comment on Rockfin, Eric. I have a statement I need to read to you guys. From Imran. Thank you so much for the tip, Roger. As Joe was leaving Afghanistan, they tried to do another what about the women and children? First Persian Gulf War, they lied about incubator babies. Maybe we should start having a message alongside pro-Palestinians, reminding people of East Palestine, Maui, Jackson, Flint, NYC, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. And thank you for this as well. They're trying to pull us into a who has the moral high ground to daze and confuse the people who are mostly apolitical, to make us malleable, to send money abroad to prop up military campaigns. We must ask the public, who should Congress prioritize, you or sending money to prop up military campaigns abroad? That's what we must ask American electorate. Making the moral argument pulls some, but this argument pulls all. That's a really good point there, Roger. I'm going to go to these super chats here. Thank you for the super chat, Rome. Palestinians and Israelis are already living under a two-state solution, and it has failed. Thank you, Mikey. Briahna is toxic, gaslighting, manipulator. Robbie just doesn't handle it well. Let it build up. She even did the low voice, "Why are you so mad?" thing. I don't think I would say that she's a toxic, gaslighting manipulator. It's a debate. Thank you, Delthea, who's been a member for 26 months. There's a difference between the rhetoric of justification and the reality of consequence. If you strike people long enough, they strike you back. The Oracle says the bottom line is that the lies of the establishment ain't working now. That's right. And this one as well. I guess resistance for the Palestinians should be tapping on the fence of the prison and saying, "Excuse me, can you please stop occupying and oppressing us?" Here you go. And Mario says, Robbie walked home that day, no scooter. Yeah, I don't know. Like that was something else.